Excellent. Well, I'm delighted to be joined this morning by Bill Oplinger, who is President and CEO of Alcoa. Bill has been in the top job for just over 24 months, and to say that he has been busy is an understatement, I would say. I'm looking forward to talking to him about the changes that he's made under his leadership, as well as more broadly the aluminium industry, some of the changes we're seeing in demand. But for those not familiar with Alcoa, its founding traced back to 1886, I think I'm right in saying. It literally gave birth to the aluminium industry by discovering a new way of producing aluminium through the electrolysis program, which really actually brought aluminium to mass commercial markets. I think I'm right in saying it IPO'd in 1925.
Something like that. Yeah.
So it's celebrating its 100th year as a public company. So its heritage really is second to none, I would say. Today, Alcoa, I think, employs 14,000 people, yes. 25 operations around the world, 8 different countries. And for those not familiar, 10 years ago, it separated its upstream and downstream business. So the downstream business became known as
Arconic.
Arconic, thanks,
and
Bill.
Subsequently split again between Arconic and Howmet.
Yeah. So Alcoa today is the upstream business of bauxite, aluminium. Bill, you're one of those success stories that has literally risen through the ranks all the way to the top job. How long have you been at Alcoa, and can you give us a flavour of the roles that you had prior to 2023?
So I've been with Alcoa now for 25 years, joined in March of 2000, started as the probably lowest level financial analyst within the company, and have had a fantastic career at Alcoa, a variety of different roles between finance, operations, and ultimately I became Chief Operating Officer of the upstream business within Alcoa, Inc., back in 2012. Then in 2013 became CFO of the parent company. We broke the company up in 2016, as you alluded to. It was a massive effort to separate a 100-year-old company into 2 companies. And I went with the upstream company, which is, as you said, mining, refining, smelting, casting. When we were born, we had a little bit of rolling, and we divested of those rolling assets pretty quickly. And then became Chief Operating Officer for around 9 months, and then ultimately became CEO in 2023. So it's been a fantastic time, fantastic career at Alcoa.
So you're appointed CEO in September 2023, and in just over two years, I think I'm right in saying you have executed the largest takeover in the company's history, initiated a monetization program, launched a new vision for the business, and also executed a successful profitability savings program, which is sort of circa 650 million a year. And this is quite interesting because investors have been quite vocal in asking majors to be disciplined M&A approach. And 5 months into your role in the top job, you launched the biggest takeover in the company's history. And
we launched that publicly. 1 month within taking over, we started working on it. And it took us about 4 months to get it announced publicly. So it was a busy first month in the job.
So this is Australia's Alumina Limited, which you not only successfully launched, but then completed. Talk us through the rationale for that. And I'm curious in the context of value creation, and how did you guide investors as to kind of what you saw as a value opportunity?
Right. So this, just by way of background, Alumina Limited was spun out of Western Mining back in 2002. Alcoa Corp was spun out of Alcoa Inc. in 2016. So this joint venture between Alcoa and Alumina Limited was a small joint venture within a very large Alcoa Inc. But when those two separations occurred over the course of that 20 years, it became a very large joint venture in a much smaller company, in Alcoa Corp. we had been looking at opportunities to consolidate that minority interest partner many times over the decades. What happened in October of 2023 that allowed us was that between October and February, really the planets aligned on the ability to get this transaction done. And when we announced it, we talked about some of the real benefits. It gives us operational control, complete strategic control of the assets. In addition to that, we were able to reduce a small amount of overhead in their corporate structure. We very quickly moved on to a transaction where we're able to monetize our 25% in Saudi Arabia. That would have been a very difficult transaction to get done had we not gotten the Alumina Limited transaction done. We repositioned some debt into Australia closer to the assets, gives us a tax shield based on the earnings in those assets, and paid off their debt early. So we timed it very well. Alumina markets did very well immediately. Alumina markets have settled back down now, but we're really pleased to have gotten that done.
Right. And so you're now a shareholder in Ma'aden in the Topco.
We are. Okay. We own 86 million shares in Ma'aden Topco. And just by way of background, Alcoa Inc., the parent company, invested $1 billion in Saudi Arabia back in 2009, 2010 timeframe. We had a 25% ownership stake in mine, refinery, smelter, and rolling mill. And what we did this year was swap out that 25% ownership for a stake in the parent company. Stock's done great, so we're very happy with that.
I've read the reports, yeah. I think it was originally worth 900 and now it's worth...
like $1.5 billion. Yeah. So I like to remind the CEO of Ma'aden, who used to be an Alcoan, that I'm his boss, in small part now. The stock's done great. We're very happy with that investment.
And so you talked about the separation between the upstream and the downstream business, but analysts really say that Alcoa has changed significantly in the last 3 or so years. Why is that, and what makes it so different from its peer group?
So we have really focused over the last 2 years on changing the culture of Alcoa Corp. We are trying to drive towards a high-performing culture within the company. And that will benefit safety, and we're starting to see the benefits in safety. Our trailing safety stats improve year over year. Production, you see that in the stability that we've had over the last couple of years. And then ultimately, it translates into the financials. You mentioned the fact that we launched a cost reduction program. We're able to do that at the same time of trying to change the culture within the organization. And you hear me talk about high-performing culture. And if you don't mind, I'll just take a second. It starts with aligned goals and interests, right? So I have a plan on a page that goes all the way down through the organization that people have a 2026 plan on a page. We then have aligned incentives. So you get paid based on how successful you are. We then have very frank and open dialogue. And that can be really good when we're successful and we celebrate our wins, but it can also be fairly difficult to acknowledge where we've been less than successful and have those dialogues. Ultimately, that ends up in empowerment in the organization. So I like to use an example of 2 regions in the world where when I was chief operating officer, we had one region where everything went extremely well. The leader of that region, the regional vice president, was completely empowered to make things happen in the region. We had another region where things were very difficult. I probably micromanaged that region on almost a daily basis. And so when you have a high-performing culture, it ends in significant empowerment, and you see it in the results: safety, production, financials.
And you launched this new vision in the summer, right? I mean, there's a very good video I would recommend people. It's very unmining is how I'd probably describe it.
So we launched the concept of a performance culture back in 2023. We have now launched a new vision for the company, and that's to build a legacy of excellence for future generations. I am all about people in our organization building a legacy for the future. And what that vision to me means is that I, as CEO, think about my legacy in the future. What will people think about what Bill Oplinger accomplished as CEO 10 or 20 years from now? But for the 14,000 employees of Alcoa, each one of them, I'm asking them, how will your legacy be thought of? Will you be thought of as a good pipe fitter in Pinjarra? Or will you be thought of a person that just mailed it in every day? Are you going to be a great welder, or are you going to be an average welder, right? And it's a drive towards really making the company successful in the future so that you can look back 5, 10, 20 years from now and say, I made a change.
So just keeping on the theme of your legacy, the mining industry is embracing new technologies, which historically probably hasn't been known for that trademark. This seems to be quite a big theme at the center of Alcoa today. So you've got obviously automated mines, you have automated robotics in some of your smelter, you talk about AI, but there's two technologies that analysts are really talking through, and one they're actually describing as a breakthrough. Could you just talk us through this ELYSIS technology?
So there's two breakthrough technologies that we're working on that we continue to fund through the cycle. First is ELYSIS, and the second is a project called Estrella. ELYSIS is a joint venture between us and Rio Tinto and the government of Quebec. ELYSIS will eliminate carbon emissions from the smelting process. So right now, when you're smelting aluminum, the source of carbon is obviously from the energy source. So if you have a renewable energy source, you have a low carbon energy source, but you still generate a couple of tons per ton of carbon in the process of smelting aluminum. ELYSIS will eliminate that. So ELYSIS uses an anode that does not get consumed in the process. Right now, in the typical Hall-Héroult process of making aluminum, it's the same process that our founder, Charles Martin Hall, developed 130 years ago. That anode gets consumed, generates CO2 in the process. ELYSIS won't generate CO2 in the process. At this point, we have started up smaller cells, 100 Ka cells, and those have been successful. Just within the last couple of weeks, we've announced that we've now started a commercial size cell at one of the Rio Tinto sites. So it's a massive breakthrough. I am confident technologically, it's going to work. We now have a large cell operating, and from a technological perspective, it will work. We have to work on the business case to drive down capital and operating costs to make it economic in the future. But it is a breakthrough technology that will completely eliminate the CO2 out of the manufacturing process.
And people, I think, are talking about this being the first technology in the smelting process in 100 years.
It's the first. The technology we run in Hall-Héroult globally, we the industry, is the same basic technology that was run by Charles Martin Hall back in 1886. It's just been improved over time. This is a real step change in the elimination of the carbon anode and therefore the elimination in CO2 emissions. Now there's a second as exciting breakthrough technology called Estrella. And what Estrella does, and we've learned this in the process of working on ELYSIS, what the Estrella process does, it takes scrap basically straight out of the scrapyard and turns it into high purity aluminum. So it will open up for Alcoa, and this is one we own on our own, not with a joint venture. It will open up post-consumer scrap markets for us to be able to take scrap straight out of the scrapyard, convert it into high purity aluminum, and will really give us a competitive advantage.
And just on the demand side, I mean, you've talked very publicly around tariffs, but I'm more interested in the long-term demand. You have been quoted saying this is the biggest sort of stage of demand you've seen in the industry. What's driving that, and what's changed over the last 2 decades?
So a couple of macroeconomic drivers. The energy transition is driving that. So electric vehicles, electrical distribution, based on the usage of higher electricity. And then also on the packaging side, we're seeing tremendous demand. The aluminum packaging is really being recognized as infinitely recyclable and is really taking off. So those are the couple of big time demand drivers that as we look forward into the future, those are the ones that are driving it. We still have strong demand through building construction, so those are the big areas.
And there's an element of constrained supply here. So obviously China's capped its production. Can you talk us through why that is?
Yes. So aluminum demand has been strong over the last few decades. We think that in our two key markets, Europe and North America, that demand will remain strong and grow. What the fundamental change that we've seen over the last couple of years is that China has decided to cap their primary aluminum production to 45 million metric tons. Give you a little bit of background. When I joined the company back in March of 2000, China probably made 1.5 million metric tons of aluminum. Today, China makes 45 million metric tons of aluminum. So over the course of 25 years, the Chinese have grown 30-fold. They have now capped it at 45 million metric tons, and they've stuck to that cap over the last 2 years. That has suppressed some of the supply coming out of China and makes for stronger economics in the aluminum industry.
And you've also talked about, people have pointed to Indonesia as a possible additional supply, but I think it's important to put in context their kind of cost of production as well, which is...
So one of the benefits that the Chinese had over the last 20 years is that their cost of capital, how much it cost to make a ton of aluminum capacity, was highly competitive versus the Western world. We were seeing in China that for $1,000 to $1,500 a ton, they could create a ton of aluminum capacity. In the Western world, that, depending on where you're at, that can be anywhere between $5,000 and $8,000 a ton. So it's a massive advantage. As they're going to Indonesia, we're seeing that fundamental advantage erode. So Indonesia is starting to build its aluminum industry, but they can't match the low cost of capital that the Chinese were able to deliver over the last 20 years.
Yeah, I've seen it sort of 2/3 above where...
$2,000 to $3,000 a ton, still an advantage over Western world, but the inherent advantage that the Chinese had in China isn't translating into Indonesia. And people ask me, well, why is that? What was the inherent advantage? The Chinese were very modular, so they were using known technology. That will translate into Indonesia. They didn't have to build anode facilities. They would buy their anodes out of large anode facilities. They can still do that in Indonesia, but they're going to have to transport them into Indonesia. Their customers were close by, so they're downstream customers. So they didn't have to build a cast house. They could ship molten metal to their customers. That won't necessarily be the case in Indonesia. Yeah. So some of the fundamental, and then the infrastructure was in place in China. In Indonesia, the infrastructure needs to be built. So some of those fundamental advantages in China are just not replicable in Indonesia.
Yeah, hence the constrained supply that people are talking about. And you've been in the news recently for gallium, which is a mineral that I wasn't particularly familiar with, but it's just been given strategic mineral status by President Trump and Prime Minister Albanese in Australia. Can you explain what gallium is used for, why it's so important, and what stage this project is in Australia?
Yeah, so gallium's highly sought after critical mineral. It's used in the semiconductor industry. It's critically important for semiconductors for the US and elsewhere. Over 90% of the gallium production is made in China. And so as the US and other partners were looking to diversify their supply chains, we were a great opportunity to do that. So the gallium is inherent in the bauxite that we mine in Western Australia. It's in trace quantities. And so what we're going to do at one of our plants in Western Australia is extract that as part of the process and build a gallium plant on the back of it that will extract that essentially waste material and make, on an annual basis, 100 tons of gallium. Now, 100 tons doesn't sound like a lot, but it's 10% of the world's gallium demand. What this has allowed us to do is the U.S. is critically interested in diversifying their supply chains, so we'll do that in Western Australia. In Western Australia and Australia, it builds the relationship between Australia and the U.S., And then the third key partner here is Japan. So part of the offtake will go up to Japan and be converted into chips that ultimately will end back up in the US in a variety of different applications. So it is a great project. We plan on having gallium production in 2026. We want to be the first to market in large scale outside of China.
Thank you very much. That was an absolutely fantastic Fireside chat. Can we please give a warm round of applause to Josh Simpson and to Bill Oplinger? Thank you very much. Thank you.